the rest of your classmates may want to watch this session again, or for the first time, by the way. So in this December the 11th session, this is a quiz.
Someone from those areas to help me out. Now, I'm going to do it area by area, and I'd like to start with Southern England, simply because that's where I'm based, sort of. Number 1.
So what you need to do is you need to guess what's the pronunciation of the cities that this lady, Lucy, is going to show, right? So I'm going to pause and I would like you to try to guess what the pronunciation of the city is, the pronunciation of the place is. All right, so here we go.
How do you pronounce this beautiful city?
Sorry. So how do you pronounce that city?
How do you pronounce this beautiful city?
What's your guess?
Maybe Gloucester.
Okay. Gloucester. Any other? Let's take a look.
It's pronounced Gloucester.
Excellent.
Gloucester. Number 2. How do you pronounce this Oxfordshire town? If you do want to go, it has a great designer outlet. We love going there. It's Bicester. Bicester. And I can assure you, before that designer outlet was built, I was calling it Bicester. So you're not alone. Number 3. How do you pronounce this town that's just outside of London?
Slav.
Slav, right? Any other option? Here we go.
Slough.
Okay, Slav.
It's Slough. Slough. Fun fact, I once had an iPhone stolen and it appeared in Slough. I never got it back. And number 4, the last one of this section, how do you pronounce this town?
Reading.
Reading, all right. Any other option? Here we go.
It's Reading. Reading. And Reading Festival was the first festival I ever went to.
I also thought it was reading. My first attempt was reading as well. So interesting, right? I knew about Gloucester. I didn't know about Slough, and I thought it was reading as well. So, I mean, it's the first thing you think, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to share this general knowledge quiz. It's always good to know a little bit more about general information. I'm going to be pausing for each question. There are 10 questions, maybe 11 with a bonus. Here we go. Okay, what do you think the answer is? Which planet is closest to the sun? Any idea?
Teacher, now I feel idiot. I don't remember that.
That's all right. That's all right.
America.
That's all right. Okay, let's take a look at this. Mercury. All right. Second question. You know about the Olympic rings, right? The Olympic Games, there are 5 rings that are the symbol for the Olympic Games. Can you guess then the color of at least 3?
5, blue, and yellow.
Okay. Let's take a look at the answer. Alrighty. Yellow, blue. You say green, right?
Red.
Red. Which country's flag is this? I got it wrong. I thought it was another one, by the way.
Ukraine. I think it's the
Ukraine.
name.
Okay. Ukraine. Cristobal?
I don't know.
Okay. Yes, Ukraine. I thought about Sweden. Nothing to do. Sweden here, right? Ukraine. Very good. Next question.
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. Do you agree with the answer?
Totally.
Okay. Here we go. Breaking Bad. You got it. Who would have thought? Oh, I never got this one. Rendang. What do you think?
The name is, it seems like an Asian name. I don't know, Indonesia, Malaysia.
It does, right? It does. Okay, let's take a look. Indonesia. You got it right. You got that one right. Next question. What do you think? It's an old song. I know. Do you know the name?
No, but I know this
Yeah.
one.
All right. Here we go with the answer. Oh, this is written by a very famous woman. Very, very famous woman. Becoming.
Obama.
Who?
Michelle
Sorry?
Obama.
Michelle Obama. All right. Let's take a look. Great. Michelle Obama. I didn't know that. Right. Which is the second largest country in the world? Any idea? Would you like to guess? Chile. Okay. Remember, that is largest, not longest. Large is a synonym for big. Yes. So what is the second biggest? Brazil. Okay. Brazil. Any other idea? Here we go with the answer.
Canada, maybe.
Canada maybe, all right? So Brazil or Canada. Here we go. Canada. Second largest, second biggest. Oh, this is a funny one. I didn't go to England. I went to London. Who said this? This is a very rich person, but who do you think? Celebrity.
No, I was thinking about Joey from Friends, but no, it wasn't.
No, it's a woman. Very rich, very famous. Here we go with the answer. All right. Which other two wonders are in Asia? What's the meaning of wonders?
Yeah.
Wonders are in Spanish maravillas, but it basically refers to very big, monumental, extraordinary constructions or architecture, buildings, wonderful designs, sometimes man-made, sometimes natural elements that are in the world.
Maybe the Great Wall of China. I don't know.
The great, that could be one. The Great Wall of China, and which other do you think? Okay, let's take a look at that. Great Wall of China. And so you got it right. The Great Wall of China and the Taj Mahal. And the last one. Which movie did Leonardo DiCaprio win the Academy Award for Best Actor for?
I think that it's called The Reverend or something like that.
All right, let's take a look. Excellent, you got it. Revenant. Have you watched this movie? Have you both watched this movie? Or Maria Fernanda, Sebastian, have you watched it?
Yes.
Yes. Did you like it?
Yes. It's
Not really? Yes?
Yes, it's a very interesting movie. The scene with the bear is fantastic, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the scene with the horse. I was totally, my mind was blown up when he was riding the. Oh, I'm not going to tell this. I'm going to talk about the movie if you are going to watch it. But there's a scene in which he's riding a horse, and then what happens after he is being chased by these indigenous people, these Indians, right? I was totally impressed, and I really felt anxiety when I was watching the movie. It wasn't like a feeling of being comfortable, but it was like always I don't know if this happened to you, but it was like a very stressing at some point, right? What great movie! If you haven't watched it, try to watch it. I think it's going to. If you have an opinion about Leonardo DiCaprio that's not very positive, probably after watching this movie, your opinion may change, right, about him as an actor. For today, we're going to be reviewing the evolution of English. For the evolution of English, I'm going to show you a video, and I want you to take notes because we're going to be discussing some information provided in the video. In the video, we're going to see a teacher of English. I think it's an ESL teacher, English as a second language teacher, and he's going to be discussing how English has evolved, becoming a global language. Because at the beginning, English was spoken in Britain and was spoken by a very small population if we compare the population of England at that time with, I don't know, China, for example, or any other countries. So how did English become such a great, or how did it become such an important language in the world? What happened in between? So he's going to give some arguments, some facts. I want you to take notes about this information given, and then we're going to share our notes to complement each other's, all right? So we can discuss after watching the video what are the main important facts or information provided by this speaker. And then we're going to talk about English dialects and some differences. And I'm going to show you some videos in which the speakers in these videos explain some of the differences that you can find or that you can expect in some specific dialects. Okay, remember the idea of world Englishes, or that it's not just one English, not just RP and GA, but several types of Englishes spoken in countries in which the language English, right, has different prestige or a different status. And then we're going to be talking about the comparative analysis task, and I'm going to provide an example. In the meantime, in the middle, we're going to have a break, right? So here we go with the video about the evolution of the English language. The question is, why has English developed as a world language? Remember, from being a language spoken in an island, how did it become such a relevant language around the world, right? So please take notes, and after we finish the video, we are going to compare some of the ideas that you wrote. I'm going to ask some questions. We are going to answer those questions. You may ask questions as well, right? And we're going to have a conversation, okay? Are you all ready? Do you have a pen? Did you all have grab a piece of paper, etc., etc.?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so I'm going to test the sound first. All right, let me know if you can hear this.
Yes.
So no problem with the sound.
No.
Alrighty, so here we go.
My name is Jeff. I am an ESL teacher, and today I will explain how English has become an international language. More precisely, I will answer this following question. How did a language spoken by 4 million people on an island in north of Europe become a global language in less than 400 years? I will first briefly expose the current situation of English in the world. Then I will speak a little about its origins. And finally, I will explain how it went from a marginal language status to the world's #1 language in so little time. What does it take for a language to become global? Two things. First, it must be learned as a second language, in a majority of countries. And second, it has to be used as a common language in some important domains in the world, such as commerce, science, and culture. English indisputably fulfills these two conditions. Let's check out some stats. Right now, more people speak English as a second language than as a first language. Actually, English is currently spoken by more people in Southeast Asia than in the US and the UK combined. We should also point out that many more people are currently learning the language than there are people who speak it well. So the situation is not about to change. According to the British Council, in the world right now, 1/3 of the books are published in English, 2/3 of scientists read English, and 80% of electronic communication is done in English. Moreover, English is the common language of several international domains, such as science, business, popular culture, international diplomacy, and aviation. During my trips in the last 15 years, I was able to measure this stunning progress myself. By the way, in the world's history, other languages also qualified as global languages, such as Latin and Greek, and to a lesser extent, French, Spanish, and Arabic, but none of them ever reached the dominance English is currently enjoying. Now, let's review briefly the origins of English. The first speakers that will become English were not the first inhabitant of the British Isles. Before them, there were, among others, the Celts and the Romans. And a few years after the departure of the latter, in 410 after Christ, the first Angles and Saxons landed on the island. And then, for more than 1,000 years, that is until the late 1500s, English evolved but remained isolated within the island. Here's the question I'm asking today. What happened afterwards? What provoked the explosion of this language? I will propose two answers, one simple and one more complex. If, for example, you are asked this question at a cocktail, I suggest you choose the short answer. To make it simple, we can say that English is now a global language because Great Britain is an island. Indeed, while other European countries were trying to expand their territory by invading their neighbors, England, being an island, had no choice but to cross oceans to conquer new land. In order to achieve that, it capitalized on its fleet and eventually gave birth to one of the biggest empires in history. The turning point of the history of English occurred when the British fleet defeated the so-called invincible Spanish Armada in 1588 under Elizabeth I. That was the short answer. Of course, when you go deeper, you see that many factors played an important role in the expansion of English. First, as I just mentioned, there is the British Empire, which was the largest empire and the first global power in history. At the peak of its power, it included 1/4 of the world's population and more than 1/5 of the Earth's total land. Inevitably, its linguistic heritage was enormous. And what proved crucial for the future of English is the emergence of American power, even as the British Empire started to decline after the First War. That event enabled English to keep its momentum and reach the position it's now enjoying. In addition to these two global causes, which are the British and American empires, we can point out 6 specific factors that help give English its global status. In chronological order, there's first the Industrial Revolution, which by starting in England gave this country an important economic advantage. Second, we can mention international commerce, which was Great Britain's strength for a long time thanks to its colonies and industrial power. Third, we must not forget the 2 world wars, which were won mostly by English-speaking countries. After the Second War, the Marshall Plan particularly gave English a boost in Europe. Next, in recent history, 2 major events made English spread even faster. First, the fall of the USSR in 1991 made the US the only superpower. And second, the dazzling growth of information technology since the mid-90s has turned English into everybody's second language on the web. Finally, we must also point out the amazing power of attraction English-speaking popular culture has internationally. In conclusion, we can see that the history of English is a real success story. Indeed, the story of a language that went from 4 million to 2 billion speakers in less than 400 years is almost real. My presentation also highlighted one important fact. The popularity of a language has nothing to do with its inherent character, but rather depends on the power of the people who speak it. Thank you for watching this presentation, and see you soon.
All right, so there are several facts. I don't know if you want to watch the video again or if you would like to discuss some of the aspects mentioned by this speaker.
Hi.
First of all, this is a question that he is posing, right? How did a language that was spoken only by 4 million people on an island in the north of Europe become a global language in this less than 400 years? So what are some of the facts that you were able to take notes of, or that you would like to discuss, or that you have some questions about?
Sorry, teacher, my mic it was working. For I take notes most about because no most about the Spanish the start of the Britain. Yes, the
Yes,
Britain
Britain,
Kingdom.
yes. Mm-hmm.
I remember very well this topic because I am a I am a I really like history.
Mm-hmm.
I was the history nerd in middle school,
All right.
so I I start um I I write it down in my notes about how the Britain Empire start to like they expand his kingdom because it start to they started to conquer colonies in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, in India, in here in America, and they started to create a real big I don't remember say it comercio in English.
Commerce or trade, yes.
Yes, trade, and only because it was an island, so they don't have the option to conquer other neighbors. So they need to expand their kingdom, and it was really massive when the years go by.
Exactly, absolutely, absolutely agree with you. And it's an interesting reverse process because they were invaded at the beginning. I mean, the Celts were sort of the original inhabitants of this island, and the Celts were invaded by the Romans, the Roman Empire. Remember that Rome was also an empire, and they were always also conquering other countries and territories for the Roman Empire, for the Caesar at the moment. And they went to this island, and the Romans at some point leave because they have to go back to Rome. As the speaker stated in 410. And then there's a series of invasions by some Viking or Scandinavian tribes called the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, among others. So these different waves of invasions, right, also have an effect on England, on its inhabitants, on the language. And then after these tribes, we have the Normans coming from the north of France, right? Also other Viking a group of people, but who were more Frenchicized, and they arrived to the island. And there's also an invasion that lasted, I think, for about 300 years. So also they brought customs, culture, and language, a type of French. So French was also influencing English at that time, and their lifestyle. So then it's the other way around. Britain, right? Britain starts to invade other countries. Samaya was saying, it starts to invade Africa, um, America, um, and other areas of the world. So it's an interesting reverse process. They were invaded at the beginning, but then they became the invaders. Um, Now, which facts, or how do you explain that this language became so important or so global? It's the invasion, so one thing, but what other facts were mentioned by the speaker? Do you remember? Amaya
I do
mentioned,
remember
yes, go ahead, please.
yes, I remember the last factor that was like I don't know how to say it, maybe pop industry. I mean, not just pop. I mean, music in English and movies like Titanic, for example, and so on.
Exactly, exactly. The music industry, the film industry, all this culture. Um, that is invading, right? Even in Chile, I think you may have discussed this with your friends, or you may have heard someone speaking about the influence of the English language and culture in Chile, and that we,
And
yeah.
actually, teacher, in my case, my first approach to English was through music. So I can see that that factor is true. And other factors that the professor said
Mhm.
were the industrial revolution and
Yes,
the how to say the um, I don't know how to say the famous that the technology got all of a sudden.
yes, exactly. The Industrial Revolution was one, and the growth of technology. Ex- exactly, the growth of technology. Very well. So far we've got factors of the Industrial Revolution, the growth of technology, the influence of the music and film industry. Any other factor that you remember?
I remember wars and the death of the Soviet Union.
Perfect. Yes, exactly. The two world wars and the death, the fall of the Soviet Union. Right. Excellent. So the world wars, World War First and Second, and the fall of the Soviet Union opened a door for the British Empire, and also for the growth of the United States as an empire as well, right? So it was not just one um, English speaking country that was powerful, but also another one that came into the competition, United States. That has been for some time ago, right? So it's interesting that if you think that several historical factors or historical events took place, and they are all aligned to make English, or to give English the status, the linguistic status that it has nowadays. Because the speaker mentioned other languages that could be considered global languages. Even he mentioned Spanish, if you remember, Arabic, Chinese, but none of them has acquired the prestigious status that English has nowadays, right? So, remember Amaya's answer as well. Great Britain is an island, so soldiers could not take, board a tank or go on a train because they didn't have any neighboring countries. They had to go on ships, right? And he mentioned that in 1588, the British defeated the Spanish Armada. At that time, Spain had a very powerful fleet of ships, right? It was very powerful at sea, but because of the British power and some luck that has had to do with some climate elements, right? The Spanish Armada was defeated, so the British Empire became the most powerful at sea, right? And this is just to remind you about the model that was presented by Cacru by Assam, in which he talks about this model that is a little bit static, but somehow explains that in the inner circle, he places the countries in which English is spoken as a first language or as a native language. In the outer circle, he includes the countries in which English is spoken as a second language, or that the language, the English language, is spoken and at the same level with another language that is spoken and have the same status. So there is an official recognition of English, particularly for matters that have to do with the government, legal aspects, commerce, relationships, etc., etc. And in the expanded circle, we can see countries like China, Egypt, Japan, Korea, Israel, Chile, in which English is spoken as a foreign language, but still has some recognition from the state, even but not declared as a second language. Okay, this is one model that can explain the importance of English in the world. There are others like Schneider's that also explain in a more dynamic way how languages are positioned in terms of world Englishes, right? Um, do you know this? Have you seen this guy before? Have you watched the video by this YouTuber?
No.
No? He has some very interesting videos in which he describes the accent of people, singers, actors, and actresses, right? So in general, he's very much into accents. Remember that accents is the different pronunciation that speakers may have about the same word. For example, you can say bath or bathe, right? You can say, let me think about another one. Dot, that's. But in general, it's a different difference in terms of pronunciation. But whenever you're thinking about a difference in terms of vocabulary, for instance, biscuits and cookies, for example, we're talking about a dialect, right? So accent has to do only with pronunciation. Dialect, a different dialect, has to do with pronunciation as well, but also with grammar and differences in terms of vocabulary. So a dialect is a more, I would say it's a bigger umbrella for this idea. I don't know if I'm explaining myself here. So accent is one thing, right? Accent has to do with pronunciation. And a dialect is a variation or a variant of a language. And when you talk about a dialect, you talk about accent, but you also talk about vocabulary, and you also talk about grammar. So whenever two um, I don't want to say languages. When two speakers have a different pronunciation, but that's the only difference, they have a different accent. But when you hear two speakers, they have a different accent, but also have different vocabulary. They use different words. We're talking about a different dialect. They have a different dialect, okay? So here we go with this video. I want you to pay attention to, yes.
If I understand good, is like here in Chile they name it the avocado palta, and the other countries name it aguacate. So it will be like that, right? Like we have the different vocabulary to naming things. So we have
Yes,
different names.
yes, exactly. When we talk about, for example, Spanish spoken in Mexico, in Peru, in Bolivia, in Argentina, and Chile, we should not be saying that we have a different accent, Spanish accent. We should be saying that we have a different Spanish dialect, because they say, for example, avocado, and we say palta. So we have a different vocabulary, different words to describe the same elements or things. Patricia.
So how can we identify different accents, like maybe in the same country? I mean, people from the countryside and people who lives in the city will have different accents, or that is another thing.
Yes, in general, we can identify different accents when we talk about speakers in the same country. Um, Now, there are more specific concepts about that. Sometimes when they refer to different social classes, that's one thing. Also, because when you refer to social classes, also we can pinpoint or identify some elements that are connected with the social class. And sometimes when you hear a speaker in a country, you can identify if the speaker is from a high social class, from a middle class, or a lower social class. Also, so if we discuss the idea of this, we can discuss this as a social act. Even if you describe how someone talks specifically, someone like, for example, Patricio, how do you talk? We should be discussing the idea of an idiolect. An idiolect is the specific type of speech that one person produces. Because we don't talk exactly like everyone else. We all have a specific some specific characteristics. So whenever you analyze how one person speaks, we refer to the person's idiolect. When we talk about the type of dialect spoken in one social class, we are talking about a sociolect. Those are some concepts in linguistics that are used to describe more specific elements. Uh, I wrote the concepts in the chat box, by the way. Okay, and so when we talk about the way, for example, we Latin Spanish-speaking countries or speakers from Spanish-speaking countries speak, we not only have a different accent, but we also have different words to refer to the same thing. So Amaya's example, avocado, palta, that's an example of different dialects, right? Not just an accent, but dialects. All right. So we're going to we're going to watch and listen to this so-called accent experts. I want you to take notes about some of the examples that he gives, right? Because he's going to refer to segmental differences mainly. Remember that segmental differences was something that we discussed last semester. Segmental differences or segmental information has to do with individual sounds. Like, for example, the ah or eh or right? The trap, the long R or the schwa, and how these sounds are produced in each one of the dialects that he's going to be discussing. Okay, so try to grab a pencil and see if you can notice some of the differences that he explains. All right, so we're going to watch this video now. I want you to take notes on some of the differences that he is making about the different accents or dialects in this case. And after this, we're going to have a break. Do you have a pencil and a piece of paper with you?
Yes.
Alrighty, here we go.
You may have seen me here before talking about accent performances in movies. What a text when those two accents are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Can you ask somebody to say a simple phrase to try to tell whether they're from, say, Australia or New Zealand?
I'm originally from Sydney, Australia.
From Philly, PA. Yorkshire. New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Number one, how to tell an Australian from a New Zealander. We can use the kit vowel. In Australia, there's a realization that is not too far off from my own American accent, for instance, something like an I sound. An Australian might say that's something like this.
Myth, myth, myth.
New Zealanders tend to centralize this sound. So instead of the tongue being arched up a little bit towards the front of the mouth, it's relaxed down a little bit towards the middle of the mouth, and you get something closer to a schwa, kut. You can hear that here.
Myth, myth, myth.
Myth,
and myth,
myth,
and myth.
So there's one actually very famous phrase that you can use that you could ask somebody at a cocktail party, say, to pronounce, to try to tell whether they're an Australian or a New Zealander if you're not sure. And that phrase would be fish and chips. An Australian might say that something like this.
Fish and chips, fish and chips, fish and chips.
Whereas the New Zealand version might sound more like this.
Fish and chips, fish and chips, fish and chips.
Fish and chips,
fish and chips,
fish and chips,
fish and chips.
Number two, how to tell somebody from the north of England from somebody from the south of England. Many accents in both places, of course, but the cool thing is you can draw a line straight across England. North of that line, strut words like cup, under, mother, love, son, are going to have a vowel sound something like oh, very similar to the vowel sound in foot words like wood, butcher, woman, look. Here is a Northern English person, and you can hear their strut vowel.
Cup, cup, cup.
In the South, there are going to be two different vowels. One is strut and one is foot, and they won't sound the same. Here's a speaker from the South.
Cup, cup, cup.
From the North.
Mother, mother, mother. Som, som, som.
From the South.
Fun, fun, fun.
Som,
fun,
som,
fun.
So if you meet somebody and you're pretty sure that their accent is from somewhere in England, but you want to know whether it's from the North or from the South, you could ask them to say the following phrase. Did you cut your foot? From the North.
Cut your foot, cut your foot, cut your foot.
From the South.
Cut your foot, cut your foot, cut your foot.
Cut your foot,
cut your foot,
cut your foot,
cut your foot.
So, of course, there are many different Northern English accents. Two famous ones are Geordie from Newcastle and Brummie from Birmingham. One way that you could potentially tell a Geordie accent from a Brummie accent would be to take the face vowel. A Brummie is going to have a sound that's kind of similar to a London sound. It's a diphthong. It's a vowel sound that starts and ends up E, moves from I, it takes a journey. So if you hear something like this,
great cakes, great, great, great,
you're dealing with a Brummie. If you hear something that's much more monophthongal, something like this.
Great cakes. Great.
Then you're dealing with a Geordie. Phrase could be David bakes great cakes. You can hear that here.
David bakes great cakes.
David bakes great cakes.
Bakes great cakes.
Bakes great cakes.
Bakes great cakes.
Next up, New York.
All right. There was a couple of examples given, right? Actually, there were three. Did you get the first one?
Fish and chips.
Yes, that was the example given, right? If you want to know the difference between an Australian and a New Zealander, ask them to say fish and chips. And what was the difference that he pointed?
The Australian would say like an E.
Yes.
So in the word myth, it's like myth, and the New Zealand would say like a schwa, like meth, something like that.
Excellent. You got it. You got it. The Australian would say short E, like fish, and the New Zealander would use a schwa, would use a centralized vowel sound. Fish, 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 fish. Great. Very well done. The second example was about. Did you get the second example?
Cut your foot?
Yes. Did you cut your foot? Did you cut your foot? If you want to know if a person is, in general, right, because there are so many different dialects in England, but he says, if you want to know if the person is from the north or the south of England, pay attention to the strut vowel. So people from the south, how would someone from the south of England would say, did you cut your foot? Do you remember what he said or the examples given? Basically, someone from the south would say, "Did you cut your foot?" Basically, right? Did you cut your foot? But someone from the north would say, "Did you cut your foot? Cut your foot." So, cut north, cut south, or the word, yeah, or the word, for example, I don't know if you're able to read this on the screen. In the south, a speaker would say some, right, with a wedge, some. And in the north, probably would get something like sum or something like som. Same thing with, for example, the word love. In the south, love. In the north, love or love, right? And the third dialects that he was discussing was the Geordie and the Brahmi, spoken in Birmingham, right? Geordie and Brahmi. Did you get the difference? The Brahmi.
The Brahmi, it would say like a diphthong, like I.
Yes.
For example, in the word great, they say like right, something like that. And
excellent.
Geordie, let's say like a long A. Like
yes.
Great.
Exactly. Great cakes. Great cakes, Geordie, and a Brahmi, great cakes. Right. Excellent. And the example given, David bakes great cakes. By a Geordie, probably he would say, David bakes great cakes, right? would prefer a monophthong and not a diphthong. Exactly. So these are the differences that we can find when we hear someone speaking in English. And don't be surprised if you hear native speakers from different countries who cannot understand each other. I was watching a video right before studying the class in which there were speakers in a in this talk show, all of them native speakers, and they were having a hard time understanding each other. Maybe we can start the second half after the break by watching this short video in this talk show, in which actually you can see that native speakers sometimes have a hard time understanding each other. So that gives us a lot of hope to all of us who speak English as a foreign language, right? So it's time for a break. And then after the break, I'm going to invite you to watch this show. This is just a couple of minutes. There are famous actors and actresses there. And after the break, I would like to take a look at a type of English that's called Filipino English. And I'll give you some instructions for your oral report. Okay? So stay tuned. Please come back for the second half. And I'll see you after the break. Okay? So I'll see you then. Enjoy the break. I'm going to get myself a cup of coffee. Go and
Okay.
get something. All right. Go and get something to drink or eat, all right? See ya.